This scenario is Invasion from the 2019 Steamroller packet. This scenario does not have the Killbox Artifice in effect, and consists of 2 circular zones which can be controlled for 1 CP by warrior units, warcasters, and warlocks, rectangular zones which can be controlled for 1 CP by warjacks, warbeasts, battle engines, and warcasters and warlocks, and 1 objective which can be destroyed or removed from play for 1 CP. Victory conditions consist of having 5 more control points than your opponent, or caster assassination.
Hi all, Rich Owens here from the famed Mark Howard Dojo. This is my first time on the channel, really excited to be on it. Playing my Skorne, I'm a long-time Skorne player, playing one of my favorite warlocks in this match in Zaal 2. Definitely one of the best guys in the meta right now, so we've got a pretty good matchup for you today. So this list is a little bit off meta, it's not my current build with the Mammoth. But we've got Max Immortals, Bronzeback, Supreme Guardian, and a bunch of support. So for deployment, pretty standard deployment here, nothing too special. We're going to have boys on the left to score the left zone, boys on the right to score the right zone, battle group up the middle. You're going to see me put the Krea on the right, Zaal on the left to get maximum Force Aura coverage on the board, because my opponent Brad is packing a ton of guns. So we'll see how he decides to match my deployment coming up here.
So I'm playing Deneghra 1 out of Scourge. So we have 2 Archnodes and Kharybdis, who's a great jack for gang fighter. Gerlach and Axiara are just great free solos for the list. Ragman is a great model to follow Kharybdis around to apply Deathfield to give him Dark Shroud. Warwitch is just a great tool model between Venom, its ability to Shadow Bind on hit. Also just a great model with Parry and Reach to allow models to have Gang Fighter. And then we have, for infantry in the list, we have the ambushing unit, which really forces people to the middle, which helps Deneghra's feed a tremendous amount. We're using Marauders for the AoEs to light people on fire. We're using Smog Belches as well, because they're long-reaching guns. And speaking of long-reaching guns, even though their threat range in terms of the distance they shoot isn't that far, Shard Pirates threaten 17 with the assault sprays they're able to put out. So between Deneghra's debuffs and spells and her feet, we have a lot of guns to threaten the table and a lot of bodies to be relevant on scenario.
So as I begin my turn 1, it's going to be a pretty basic run forward turn, nothing too crazy. So I'd like to talk a little bit about the matchup, which is pretty interesting. It's a little bit of a unstoppable force meets immovable object type of game in Zaal, who brings just a ferocious attrition army versus Deneghra 1 gun list, which is very fast, threatens real far with extremely powerful guns when you combine them with Deneghra's debuff ability. So you're going to witness a pretty cagey game here, especially at the start, where I am positioning my defenses as best I can, and Brad's Cryx army is positioning as best he can to alpha as much of my army off the table as fast as he can. I think that's because he doesn't have a fantastic long game in this game. He's really got to get a ton of work done on his feet turn alpha, and if he doesn't get enough work done, it's probably the game. And his army is completely capable of putting in that kind of work. It's just we're going to play really cagey around each other because I'm setting up to survive his alpha, and he's going to set up to win the game on his alpha. So it's going to be a pretty interesting back and forth positional game in that respect. So as you can see here, I'm mostly just measuring the threat of his Archnodes so that he can't get like a turn 1 crippling grasp on any of my Immortals, because we want to make him work for that a little bit. As you can see, we've got our Immortals positioned up top to score that zone. We're going to position below to score that zone, and we're going to run 2 units around my Supreme Guardian with the intent of filling him up on souls, so that we can basically surround him with 2 units of Immortals so that he can negate Crippling Grasps with Arcane Vortex.
So as we go into our first turn, things we're going to be looking at are how we're going to be able to play this scenario game. So down towards the bottom of the table, we have that obstruction that gives a few models a great position to hide to make that zone really difficult to score. The easier of the zones to clear to actually start scoring, because we're both going to be able to hide models behind the obstruction, is towards the top. So my plan this game is to play a little more aggressively towards the top of the table to try and clear out that circle. Beyond that as well, it's where the Supreme Guardian isn't. While actually it's easier to kill the Supreme Guardian than the Bronzeback for my list, the Supreme Guardian is able to kill more models, so it has a greater impact on the table. So if I'm playing aggressively on the bottom, what would end up happening is if I overextend, the Supreme Guardian is going to be able to clean up much more than if I overextend on the top to try and kill Immortals, then the Bronzeback will be able to get. So with that, we're still fairly centralized, but if you notice, the majority of the units are more towards my right, towards the top of the table. Down towards the bottom, we're going to start putting in Shard Pirates so they can reach down and deep, play pretty aggressively on his side of the table, and hopefully grab a lot of attention. Especially because they're not great at being able to do their assault sprays through that forest, but they can jump through that water and rubble fairly easily. The other thing that house is great for is it makes a great landing spot for the Warwitch Siren. So what we're able to do here is if we wanted to put Ghostly onto the Warwitch Siren from the Arc node that's just in front of the trenches down towards the bottom of the screen, she can charge through that obstruction. And if we charge into a back arc against the Supreme Guardian, I'm able to make an attack to try to Shadowbind it, so I know what it'll be for the turn after. It has no way to shake Shadowbind, so it's an excellent control piece, and it's something that Rich now has to force the Supreme Guardian towards the middle of the table to not have that happen to him, which then lets it play into the feet and where all of my attacks are. So by forcing it up towards the middle, it changes the positioning game on that side of the table. And if he's not using Supreme Guardian to hold that zone because of the Shadowbind threat, it lets the Shard Pirates, which are threatening that Immortal unit, do that much more work.
So as we go into my top of 2, I'm not feeling great about the game at this point. Because Zaal generally wants to go second. It gives him a big tempo advantage in the game, and it usually dictates that he gets defeat second, which is what he wants to do in pretty much every matchup. So I'm not feeling great, but we're going to do the best we can. We're doing all our maintenance phase stuff here, and we're going to put our plan into action. As you can see, I'm proxying where my Supreme is going to land. And Brad has done something pretty brilliant here in that he's cornered the Supreme Guardian between Kharybdis on the top side and a Warwitch Siren on the bottom. And Kharybdis is an absolutely fantastic piece against the Supreme Guardian because his 4-inch reach gets him around the Supreme Guardian's defensive strike. 99% of the time it gets him out of the Gnawing Pain aura. And with Denny's just huge damage swings, he can kill a Supreme Guardian, especially on feat turn. And then the Warwitch Siren, while I can defensive striker, if Deneghra feats, the Supreme Guardian will go down to mat 5 up to 6 under Veteran Leader. So he needs a Signs Importance. I think it's a 9. It's either an 8 or a 9 to hit the Warwitch Siren. But either way, not loving those odds. And then if she hits me, she Shadowbinds me, which is really bad. Really bad for a battle engine. So the Supreme ends up being a little bit between a rock and a hard place in that I've got also ambushers to worry about, a Warwitch Siren holding down the circle zone, and Kharybdis up top. So as you can see, I'm deep in the tank here, really trying to put the Supreme Guardian in the right position because it's going to decide much of the game where the Supreme Guardian goes. Because as I said before, with his Arcane Vortex ability, he's going to really let me position my Immortals in an aggressive way on that flank because they're pretty hard for him to kill without Brad's ability to land Crippling Grasp or Parasite. So we've got the Krea walking up. She's going to put out a Force Aura, which again is going to do pretty good work in protecting Immortals against specifically his Pirate Boys who have assaulting sprays. which just do absolutely devastating work with all Deneghra's tools. So we're putting up a boy as vengeance bait. We've got the Supreme Guardian proxied, so we're basically going to surround the Supreme Guardian with Immortals, or as idiots as I like to call them, in a little bit of a dangerous formation, because we have to keep in mind that Deneghra can just put out a bunch of Venoms, which I can negate, but it's hard to negate all the spells. And then he's got his Pirate Boys, who have Assaulting Sprays. So as you can see there, that is a absolutely delicious formation for a spray. But what I'm hoping is that the Krea's Force Aura is going to do good work to keep me safe in conjunction with Arcane Vortex, stopping Deneghra's spells. So we put the Supreme there. It's a little bit of a risk, but he's got to live somewhere. The Warwitch Siren can definitely get to me because Brad can Ghost Walker. But again, we're just trying to tax Deneghra's resources because she only has 7 focus. So the idea is she can't do everything. So let's see, over here, I think it may have been Zaal killed an Immortal because we're trying to fill up the Supreme Guardian with souls for Arcane Vortex. And then you see Abidan has run into the middle of the rectangle. He is an absolutely incredible solo because he comes back every turn, and Brad doesn't have any RFP, so Abidan just gets to run up, take board space, and exist, which is just an outrageous ability for a solo. You can see on the top side, my Immortals run into the zone. Brad is going to basically have his way with them. We've got no protection from any of his spells. But we're hoping that with the Force there blocking us, we've got enough in there so that he doesn't score that zone, which we do not want him to do. Zaal's just backing up. There he goes, killing an Immortal. A little bit annoying because he's got tough. I've had that really mess with me before. But we managed to kill him. We've got 2 souls, which means whatever is within 3 inches of the Supreme Guardian, he cannot Crippling Grasp or Parasite, because those are 3-cost spells that he can only cast twice in a turn. So again, we're positioning. We're also being dumb, and eventually we realize that everyone needs to live within 3 of the Supreme, which feels bad, but I think it's what you need to do in this matchup. I'm taking a long time this turn, but again, this is a pretty cagey game, and we are going to need to protect against Deneghra's Alpha. Looks like we actually don't put all the Immortals within 3, which may be a bit of a mistake, but again, we're trying to protect against the ambush, and we're hoping he is unwilling to sacrifice an Arc Node to land a debuff on that dark green unit. And I believe that is going to be it for my turn. Nothing too exciting, but a really interesting positional cage match that is happening between the two of us.
So as we go into turn, or top of turn 2, I should say, Rich has not feeded, but he hasn't given me a lot to go on either. So the whole middle of the table, the spot I'd like to debuff the most, all of those light green Immortals are all in Arcane Vortex range. I don't have enough spell output to make it so I'd be able to get a debuff onto them. So what I think I'm going to do is actually I'm going to try and hold feet here. And I'm going to look to pressure that top side of the table like I was looking to. Additionally, because he didn't press up too far, because he didn't feet yet, I'm not in tremendous concern for him being able to push through and really run away with the scenario here. That bottom obstruction really cuts that zone in half. I don't think he's able to reach far enough into the rectangle to score a quick 2 on the bottom of 2 by killing the objective and getting rid of what I'll tow into the zone with. And that top forest is as much a hindrance for him as it is for me. So we're not going to be going for a feat turn next. I want to save that. With us both having control feats to some effect, I want to make it so that I'm feeding second. It's a way to get a tremendous mileage out of it. If I can also wait to feat for a full round after he has, I think it would give me a tremendous tempo setup. But I'm just not given enough right now. So the only reason I would feat right now is if I was able to walk forward to Deneghra, or say charge Abidan with Deneghra, feat and debuff Zaal 2 and shoot him with enough Smog Belchers or just get enough range attacks onto him to where I thought an assassination was even a viable out. I can't see what his exact stack is right now, but from memory it was over 3. It's 3 or 4. There's not going to be enough attacks to make this reliable. So I go off that plane pretty quick, and I think we're going to go onto the attrition route. So we run our Arc Node up top. They're grouped up not tremendously tightly, but tight enough to where I'm going to look to debuff the unit and then shoot kind of around the back of the Fars with the Smog Belchers. And I can also land a pretty great Venom Spray in. So we're keeping Deneghra far enough away from the Immortal Vessel that if it runs, I can't get Sunder Spirited to death. The fear of killing that unit, if I do end up killing a majority of that unit, is I can load Zaal up to into the high teens worth of souls, and then I really run the risk of just getting Spell Assassinated off if I spend down too low. The unfortunate bit this turn, and what you see me now play with my focus about, is I missed the Crippling Grasp. So I had still lined up a Venom Spray to catch the whole front 5 members of the unit. I still elect to go for that. And I end up hitting 3 of them, but I don't crack armor on any. So while I had fully intended to try and shoot as many guys dead in that unit, without triggering Vengeance at this point, I don't think it's going to be worth it to put just 1 to 2 Marauder shots in and Smog Belcher shots. So time to redirect here. We're still going to have to make some attacks here. I'm given the bottom of 2. There's things in threat range. So we have to start looking through it where our targets are best here. Down towards the bottom of the screen, kind of right behind the Supreme Guardian, is where a lot of his support staff is. So we're going to start looking to see what we can get there. One thing I do the math on is that Smog Belchers are a PAL 13 on their guns. Going down to Blasting, that's PAL 7. Immortals under a Krea Animus go to Armor 19. So my blast damage cannot hurt them, and I have no fear of triggering Vengeance, even if I roll a crazy high damage roll. So I'm going to have all of them just load off into that Basilisk Krea. The Krea right now makes it so that the math for Shard Pirate Assault Sprays gets much, much worse, to where it's like needing Crippling Grasp or Parasite to crack armor reliably. Hitting, I'm really relying on the feat for that. But if the Krea Animus is up, plus they have +2 defense from the UA, even with just feat alone, I'm going to be needing 8s to hit, so the math gets really rough. So if I'm able to remove the Force Aura, it really makes my presence on the bottom of the table much stronger. So without triggering Vengeance, but corroding a few guys at the top, throwing a pretty good handful of damage into the Krea, really the rest of this whole turn is just going to be posturing. I don't want to trigger Vengeance on any of the units, because I don't want him to get farther up the table to make that scenario pressure I was talking about earlier, tremendously worrying. So Deneghra's moved up to the screen a little bit, so we have to pull the Arc Node in towards the bottom towards her, which we'll get to in a moment. But we're really shifting all of our strength towards the top side of the table, like I was saying earlier, and just putting annoying models for him to deal with towards the bottom. So we have the Dirge Seers, who can summon Vortex on themselves to reduce mat. Immortals do have reach, but it can still make it so that getting multiple attacks try and hit require specific positioning, and then the Warwitch Siren hiding behind the obstruction.
So it's now my top of 3, and scoring starts. And just a little bit of an insight into Zaal 2's game, as I said earlier in this report. What Zaal really wants to do is he wants to score a couple control points and pop his feet. So he wants to get up 1 to 2 on scenario and then just grind the game out from there. So immediately as I start my turn, I understand that it's going to be Zaal's feet turn, and that I would like to potentially score at least 1 control point. But unfortunately for me, Brad has played it really well. He's got a cloud wall on the rectangle. It's making that nearly impossible to score. I'm not going to be able to score the top zone. I don't have enough resources there. And the bottom zone is the most vulnerable for Brad, but he's positioned high defense pieces in really annoying places. So I don't think it's worth it to try to go for that, because I'd likely have to sacrifice my Arc Node, which is an important piece in this game, because it threatens Deneghra basically every turn of the game with Zaal spell slinging, and it's really important to threaten Deneghra because assassination is her most vulnerable point. So we walk Zaal up, we feat, we camp Fury, and we like where we're at. We're at a good central position. The feat's going to cover a lot. So our main goal here is we want to kill the Arc Node, because killing Deneghra's Arc Nodes is really good. Who thought so? Who would think? So we're doing that. We're trying to commit as few Immortals as possible. We want to keep them nice and spaced out so that his sprays and his fire AoEs from his trolls, just so that we can manage all that a little bit. But at the same time, we need to commit enough to kill his node. So that's what we're doing there. Again, we're being very careful with our positioning, because that's what you need to do in this matchup, or else you will lose all of your Immortals to Deneghra. So we're boosting some hits off Zaal, cranking some rolls there, and we kill the Deathripper with ease. So again, Abidan came back, and he's again running into the zone, again taking up valuable board real estate, and just being a general nuisance. We've got an Ancestral moving up aggressively. Again, it's our feat turn, so we're going to push pretty hard here, and we're basically going to, at the end of this, flip clock to Brad and say, how do you deal with this? What do you do? It's a million armor 22 Immortals in your face. Fun. And unluckily for me, Deneghra is pretty good at killing Immortals no matter what armor they are. So we're going to move up with the Dark Green boys. We're going to see what we can do about this Dirge Seer in the way, but we've essentially abandoned the plan to score that zone. So we're not going to score any control points this turn on Zaal's feat turn, which is usually pretty bad news. Because he's a 7-turn grinder of a Warlock, and he really needs to get up on control. So we boost a hit, we kill the lady, just thinning out the herd there. The Supreme's going to move up, he's going to get in a position. I believe we're going to position every Immortal from those 2 units around the SG for Arcane Vortex purposes. I believe he flung an AoE out to try to catch the Warwitch Siren on fire. That didn't work. We're positioning Immortals. I believe the Krea is going to move up there, cast a Force Aura to make them pretty resilient in guns. With Grave Mist and Force Aura under Zaal's feet, Immortals are defense 15, armor 24 into ranged attacks, which I heard is pretty good.
So with Zaal feet now up and losing the Arcnet up top, we're going to look to see what we can do this turn, but I really don't want to feat, and I also want to hold the ambush for as long as possible. So without scenario pressure really coming to a tipping point yet, I don't want to ambush yet this turn. If we look down towards the bottom, he's got a whole line of guys just sitting there waiting to receive the ambush. Them being off the table is doing more than they probably would be if they were on the table. So what we're looking at right now is how do we clear up our small archers in the middle, so we can continue to try and hammer through on that support staff down the bottom. I'd like to finish off the Krea, and I'd like to work on the Agonizer if at all possible. With Abidan being the only shield guard in the list, him being the thing engaging up in the middle means that it won't be there for later. So we have Kharybdis make short work of him there. What we're really going to try and do this turn, though, is bring our continuous effects to bear here. So the Immortals are armor 22 under Zaal feet. but we have a pile of continuous corrosion and continuous fire between the venom sprays off the Warwitch Sirens and venom off the Arc Node. We also have our Blood Priestesses hang out towards the top of the screen who we can try and utilize later, and then all of the Marauder shots do continuous fire. What I do get lucky here about, and one thing to keep in mind for the future, a Bronzeback does have countercharge, which I do 100% forget. So I'm fairly lucky that I happen to stay outside of 6, but we do almost get caught sleeping with that. So we're lucky enough that we're able, I think, to pull off the Krea here. So that next round, if we're able to go to a next round, we'll have Deneghra feet in the middle of the table. In theory, we'll have a lot of guns to leverage. There we go. We're checking the countercharge now. So lucky me there. But we're gonna have a lot of guns to leverage. We have the Shard Pirates. We have Smog Belchers, or at least the majority of the units still. We have all the Marauder shooting. We'll be able to ambush if we still want to, or choose to. We have Kharybdis, who's in a prime spot in the middle of the table to affect either the Bronzeback under feet, the Supreme Guardian, depending on where it goes. He can also just clean up a handful of Immortals all in melee. But the real goal here in this game is going to be to clear that top zone. So it's still just one Immortal unit and an AG, where I have my entire army, and then his bottom is the Bronzeback and the Supreme Guardian. And I have very little, but I think my models stick to the table better because of that obstruction. I think the terrain is hugely relevant. So in the nature of Zaal feat, you're not able to really do a lot. So there's very few things that end up making range attacks here, but we're really looking to see what we can do so that we're going to be killing him during his maintenance phase. Now, the long-term plan here is to be collapsing aside and then playing like a long-term contest game. So I think I'm postured fairly well to get that going at some point this game. The question is when we'll be able to really get that into full swing. So what we're going to be doing first, though, is, again, working that top side. So we're able to send Gerlach in, and with Berserk and Overtake, and just being a natural weapon master, is he able to start really dancing through some of these Immortals. So we go, and our charge attack, 4 dice damage ends up killing that one of them. We Berserk and Overtake, and we're able to kill the second. On the non-charge attacks, we still get 3 dice damage being a weapon master, and at PAL 13, we're dice off 9. So I do need 3 dice 10s. I don't get the second one. So here we send the Blood Priestess in. Her charge attack is also able to kill an Immortal needing a hard 10, and that lets me throw out a Venom Spray. So again, trying to layer on those continuous effects. So we're corroding a handful of Immortals up towards the top of that screen. And then we're going to bring some Marauders forward to throw out some gunshots as well. To again light them on fire, corrode them, while they'll still get the souls for them. This happens prior to Vengeance, so it's not even like I'm at risk of losing guys. Well, I am at risk of losing guys, but I'm not at risk of losing as many if the fire does the work I need it to for me. So we're posturing them forward. Now, with getting as much work into that teal unit as I did this turn, we're going to have to swing Deneghra down towards the bottom of the table, or at least centralize her more, so my feat's able to cover both the light green and dark green units. As for setting up for scenario, next turn we're pulling some of the Shard Pirates back so we don't get lit up by the continuous fire on the Supreme Guardian. We also move a Dirtseer forward who summons Vortex, who now blocks line of sight to the Warwitch Siren, again just making the scenario game that much harder.
So, my friends, it is now my top of 4, and as you can see, this game is super cagey. Not a ton has happened yet, but my feat is gone, and Brad still has his feat. That's really bad news for me. That basically means next turn, unless I can do an absolutely massive amount of work this turn, he's going to wipe out half my army. And it's going to be really bad. He's positioned everything really well, except as you'll see me measuring in a moment, he has left Deneghra a bit exposed. So as we get into this turn, we're going to try to take advantage of that. So we've got a key thing here. We're making some vengeance swings, and Hakaar is going to get a righteous vengeance. We're just going to allow him to move 3 inches forward. Because last turn we sneakily placed Abidan forward within 5 inches of Hakaar. So we attempted to lay a little bit of a trap. So Hakaar's going to Righteous Vengeance forward, and we're going to give him Pathfinder for my objective. And as you can see me proxying out here, Hakaar is going to be able to charge the Troll Boy that is in the tree. So we'll have to make his charge attack on the Troll, and then he's going to be able to buy attacks on Deneghra, who is on the top side. She's got her staff up kind of right next to the trench there. So we're going to be able to get Hakaar there, and we're going to be able to boost his attack and damage rolls with Zaal. And we'll see if that's enough to kill Deneghra. She is camping 7 focus, I believe, this turn. So she's camping a ton, but even in Armor 19 Deneghra, effectively Armor 19 Deneghra is pretty vulnerable to a POW 15 Hakaar with a bunch of boosts available. So we got a plan. Looks like the can't remember their name. Looks like the boy gave Hakaar Stone Strength, and it's almost go time here. So we're counting out our Fury that we have available for boosts. And it also looks like we're going to be able to get a couple of Immortals to go incorporeal and walk through the forest to get a couple swings on Deneghra as well. So we're talking through it, measuring things out. Again, this is likely the play for the game, so I don't want to mess it up. Yep, so it looks like the Immortals are going to go incorporeal. We're going to get 2 swings on Deneghra. I don't believe we're going to use any of my Fury to boost these, as we're going to save that all for Hakaar. But again, we're going to be Mat likely 7, assuming we're under Veteran Leader. So we'll need 9s to hit. Definitely worth a try. And then it looks like we're going to get a couple swings on... Yep, so we missed both swings on Deneghra. And then I think the last piece of the puzzle is going to be killing the troll or the ogre, whatever the hell he is, the guy with the gun, who's standing in the cloud there, because he will be able to get a free strike on Hakaar. So that's what we're doing with the light green Immortals. We're giving him a charge, get him out of the way, and then Hakaar will be able to do his charge with no impediments. So the Immortals are running. They've also gone incorporeal. Trollman fails his tough, and it's go time for Hakaar. So Hakaar gets his charge. He's got within 2 inches of Deneghra. We kill the troll. So now we've got a second initial and 3 bought attacks. Oh, I believe we missed our first one. We hit the next one. We're Mat 9, so we need boosted 7s to hit. So we're getting a couple good whacks in there. Deneghra is spending her focus for all of these, obviously, because she's got 7. Now it's a little bit of an interesting decision. What we're doing here is we're making sure Abidan, who's within 5 inches of an Ancestral, he's stuck in terrain, but he can walk 3.5 inches to get a swing on Deneghra. So we're basically deciding if we want to use our last Fury to boost the last damage on Hakaar, or if we want to save it for Abidan. But I think we decide to use it on Hakaar, and we roll a 14, which is enough to kill Deneghra.
I think advanced movers might be bad luck. Between the 2 games at Nova and this game, I cannot find myself a win. This was a great game, though. It really speaks to the strength the positioning has in this game. I think I was in an excellent spot long-term in that game. I just needed to have Deneghra about 2 to 3 inches farther back, or just behind some more relevant models. Allowing that charge is what really sealed my fate when I moved her forward to posture for a really strong feat turn next round. Even a pretty medium feat where I'm able to remove over half to 2/3 of both units in the bottom and middle of the table should be strong enough to carry home a win for me. But I was going for the greed line for trying to get all of them and move forward, and got myself killed by Hakaar. So lesson learned for next time, and hopefully I'll find myself a win on advanced maneuvers at some point. Thanks for watching.